Cashiers, what's been the most interesting reaction you've experienced when someone's gotten their card declined? Story 1. Not necessarily a bad customer behavior story, but one that I'll share anyway. I was a cashier at a chain hardware store, the big orange one. A mom, dad, and a few kids, all in ill-fitting clothing, but pleasant as all get out, come up to the register and look like they're having a rough day. They have 3 carts full of merchandise, all basic stuff, one of everything you would need if you were moving out or starting from scratch. Toilet paper, cleaning supplies, mop, broom, light bulbs, carts full of just about everything you can imagine. I ask, "You guys moving to a new place?" The mother says, "Actually, our house burned down." I apologize for their circumstances and continue to ring up their items. The total ends up over $1,000. I run their card and it's declined. At this particular department store, you're allowed to discount a total up to $50 without manager approval. So I do that and it's still declining. The parents look like they're at their complete breaking point, but are taking it so gracefully for a family with 3 kids who just lost everything. The mom tears up and starts calmly making decisions about what to put back. I ask them to hang tight, pulled the manager aside and explained the situation. The manager and I walk back to the family, and they're still eliminating things, and my manager took 50% off the entire transaction, then added a 10% senior discount and a 10% military discount on top of everything. The card then worked, and they were incredibly grateful and nearly in tears as I bagged everything up. I'll never forget how awesome that manager was. I didn't even have to really explain anything after I said, "So their house burned down," and she immediately jumped into action to show some compassion. As a person who's had their house burned before, this hit home hard. I wish you could give that manager thanks. I'm glad they exist. Story 2. Back in the mid-90s, often you would have to call in a credit card, dial in the number and expiration date and the amount over a phone. If it was declined, there was no additional information. So I was working at a Walgreens that never closed. The crap that is sold at a drugstore is pretty impressive. The customers are captive for half an hour, and the practical items are few and far between. So the store sold toilet piggy banks and fake-mounted deer heads and extended grabbers that couldn't actually grip. So this family comes in and loads up 2 shopping carts late at night just before Xmas. I rang it all up. The card was declined, so we voided the sale, and the family took a few things out. I rang up items and still declined. This repeated until there was a pile of rejects and a pile of still wants. The still wanted pile got smaller, and the rejected pile got bigger. They were dejected and humiliated until it finally went through. I think that this was their Christmas, and they waited on a card to come, but the line was not for the amount they wanted. They were stuck with picking out their gifts for each other among overpriced crap. I spent the rest of my shift putting the entire reject pile away. That feels really sad. Story 3. Back in the 90s, I worked for Rumbelows. Had a guy pick out a new TV and VCR, wanted warranty, nice easy sale. Trouble is, I noticed the signatures were a bit different, and in those days, anything over £100, you had to phone through for authorization. So I did, and the card was stolen. Lady at the other end of the phone said I was as much as possible supposed to hold the line and keep the customer in the store, as the police had been called. So I say to the guy, "Sorry, it seems their system is playing up, so it's going to take a while for the authorization to come through." He seems fine with it. Waited and waited, what must have been 20 minutes, and another customer said, "You know what, mate? You're making it look like he's stolen that card." I told them that I was just told to wait for the authorization code, and that would take a while, 'cause their system yada yada yada. Card bearer pegged it out of the shop. I could now explain to the Good Samaritan that the card was stolen, and in the nicest possible way that he was a dong and should keep his thoughts to himself. Got paid £50 for the card, handed it to the police, who turned up about 5 minutes after he'd bailed. Told them what he was wearing, but he was long gone. Story 4. Late to the party, but this one was pretty heartwarming. A woman came through with a bag of dog food, some clothes, and a bit of makeup. Total was probably about $120. Run her card, and it declines. So she asks if I could take the makeup and clothes off. Tried again, and it still declined. She broke down crying, saying she didn't deserve the affection of her dog, and that she was a horrible person because she couldn't even afford a $20 bag of food to feed him. Clearly, she had a bit of a rough patch going. So the dude behind her in line asks me what the largest quantity of dog food we sell is and where in the store it is. I tell him the size and location. He tells the woman to wait and comes back with two 50-pound dogs of bag food. Two 50-pound bags of dog food over his shoulder. Dude sets it on the belts, buys it, and the clothes and the makeup. Woman proceeds to cry harder and thanks him profusely, hugging and kissing him on the cheek. Dude says it's not a big deal, that he was just recently out of a situation like that, so he understood. A lot of crappy people come through retail, but witnessing little moments like this made it bearable. Story 5. Lady comes through my line early Christmas Eve, as in before 9 a.m. She's got well over $300 worth of stuff. She pays with a couple of gift cards and then her debit card. The card is not approved, but it's not the "you've got no money" declined. She tries again and gets the same message. She asks me to suspend it, and she'll come back within 30 minutes with another card. About 15 minutes later, she comes back. She said she went out to the car and called her husband, and he found out the account was suspended. Since the bank wasn't open, they couldn't do anything. She had $30 in cash, plus the gift cards, so she whittled the order down to where she could pay. As she was doing this, she explained it was bad news and good news. The bad news was that the account was suspended because of a large purchase the day before. The good news was that it was her husband buying her Christmas gift. She left with a big smile. Story 6. Several years ago, the day after Christmas at Target, woman has 3 carts full of marked down Christmas merchandise. My scanner was broken, so I had to hand type each UPS code in by hand. Needless to say, it took a while. Customer complained about how much I was inconveniencing her by taking so long. Finally finishes ringing up her purchases, and she hands me a card. Declined. She had me run it again. Declined again. Sighing outrageously, she pulls out her wallet and flips it open. I swear the woman had like 20 credit cards. She starts wiggling her fingers over them like she's picking a tarot card. Hands a new card to me. Declined. Another card. Declined. Had me try several cards more. All declined. Finally, super angry, she writes me a check. In mounting glee, I tell her it's declined also. She slams her front cart away and stomps out the exit. Lady behind her asks if her items are up for grabs. I say yep and proceed to watch as a horde of people ravage the contents of the carts. It was awesome, like watching sharks eat chum. Story 7. I work at a burger joint and I've never had anything over the top. One guy just kept pulling out more cards to try. He must have tried like 5 cards before one worked. It was like a magician pulling scarves, and I was both awed and horrified, as someone who has only ever had one debit card, and that card alone. My personal favorite was a guy, pretty young, who ordered a pretty large order, 8 hamburgers and some other stuff, drinks and whatnot. It's going to be our last order for the night, because we are closing in like 5 minutes. Our system puts the order through to get made up before that person pays. Bad system. So it takes less time between payment and receiving their food. Well, the guy's first card declines. So does his second. Let me go to my car real quick. Guy walks right out and never comes back. His food is already made though, so the managers gave a burger to each of the staff members who were staying to clean and close that night. Best free burger I've ever had. Story 8. Just the other day I had a lady whose card declined. Her response was to try it about 6 more times. Then it hit her. She works at a resale shop and had to use a big magnet for jewelry or something. She forgot to take her card out of her pocket, and long story short, she managed to demagnetize her card. Her solution was to run home and grab cash, which wouldn't have been a big deal except she ran her food stamp card first, and the register physically will not let me do anything except finish tendering. So I had to cash her out, return the non-food items, hold them until she got back, and re-ring them up. And yes, she spent a good 5 minutes ranting about how I was conspiring against her until she figured out what happened. That happened to me, except that I was splitting a buckyball cube in half. Story 9. I was working at a mega bookstore. A man came up with 2 or 3 serious philosophy books. Then he flicked his credit card at me. Don't do that to a cashier. Just don't. I said nothing and swiped his card. It declined. The screen asked me to call Amex. I tell the customer I have to call. He hisses at me not to say it so loud. I had a phone with me, so I made the call right there, standing at the register. Amex tells me to confiscate the card if you believe you can do that. So I say, sorry, they tell me I have to take your card. He screams, my mother is a chunt. She cut me off. I cut the card in half. I still feel good about that day. Story 10. I had a lady show me over $26,000 in one bank account and over $5,000 in the other on her iPhone to prove she wasn't lying she had money. It was the first time I saw that much money in one place where it was accessible. It was like money corn. I totally believed her at first, though. She was traveling for the concert, and it happens a lot where a card gets declined because the bank thinks it's fraud. She was buying over $200 worth of merchandise and ended up getting the money from a friend or something. A friend of mine whose entire family, relatives, etc. included, are super rich. They once showed me his emergency funds bank account had 10 million British pounds on it. Made me realize how little I actually have. Story 11. We see a fairly clever smoke and mirrors routine at my liquor store. Customer comes in, walks to the spirits hard liquor section, and puts one bottle under their shirt while picking up a second and walking back to the register with it. They attempt to buy the second bottle with a card that they know will decline. Then they say they have to call their bank and dial a number as they leave. Misdirection works. I work at a liquor store and recently caught a woman doing almost this exactly. She would put one in her purse, or shirt, and bring another bottle to the register. She would then pretend to search for her wallet and have to go get it from the car, and never come back. After I noticed her not returning 2 or 3 times, we checked the tapes, and sure enough, she's stealing. Story 12. Not a cashier, but occasionally did credit card transactions in a call center. We had a rule that the transactions had to be made with a domestic credit card. We were told that the credit card would be declined otherwise. That is, if you do a transaction in Germany, you need a German credit card. This person was in Scotland, but a student from Taiwan. I mentioned that I needed a domestic credit card, and he did have one, so I attempted the transaction, but it was declined. So he told me to try another card. I did, it went through, and only then he told me that his had been a Taiwanese card. That was the last time I did the spiel about domestic credit cards. Credit cards work all over the world. You just got to tell your credit card issuer that you will be using them out of the country. Story 13. I had a guy who pulled cash out of his wallet to pay, but before he handed it to me, he stopped and said, "Oh wait, I can earn points on my card." So he got his card out and swiped, declined. Tried again, declined. So he says, never mind, and just leaves his stuff. It was only like $40, but I was like, you don't want it because you can't get points? No clue what that was all about. I'll wager his $40 that man was high as frick. Story 14. When I bought my TV, like $700, my card was declined, and the guy was saying somewhat condescending crap, like, well, it could be the money isn't there, or maybe something else. Since nobody was behind me, I immediately called my bank and found out they declined it because it was over $500. I guess they auto-enrolled me in some protection thing where if it's over $500, they decline, then send you a text message and you just respond yes or no. If you say yes, just swipe it again. What's funny is the whole time I was on the phone, I didn't realize I had that text waiting, so it worked after that, but it was embarrassing. Story 15. On the receiving end, I was working in construction pretty far from home, and for lunch I went to get an $8 custom sandwich from a fancy grocery store. At the register, my card declined, and when it did, I immediately checked my phone and saw I had a $0 balance. I told the lady, sorry, I can't pay for this. And she said, wait, hold on, and called a few people over, and she ended up paying for it for me. I still remember her face. I tried to pay her back after my next payday, but she said, no, I don't want it. I like to help, and I imagine other people will do the same. I will never forget her. She turned what would have been a depressing day into something I will never forget. Story 16. I had one lady who screamed and accused me of purposefully making her card decline to embarrass her. As if a 16-year-old making minimum wage somehow could manage that, or would have any reason to do that to a stranger. I've gotten that too. Best one, though, was when someone accused me of working as a secret government agent to use her declined check to gather all of her personal data. Story 17. I was told to be quiet and polite when explaining that a card wasn't working, so when the transaction was declined, I tried to keep my voice down. Older gentleman with family asked me to speak up, but he still couldn't hear me. His family laughed and said something like, "You daft bugger, the card's been declined." He laughed, said he used the wrong card. Fortunately, the other one worked. At least it was a positive reaction. Story 18. Everyone was pretty chill during my years in retail. They either paid cash or asked me to hold things so that they could hit the ATM. And this was not an affluent area by any stretch, so fairly common occurrence. I did get one person who was in denial and went through every credit or debit card in their wallet. 8 total. I almost thought the machine was broken until the next person in line had no issues whatsoever. Mrs. 8 card was not amused, but couldn't do anything. Never saw her again. Story 19. This happened to a friend, but I worked at the same place at the time. My friend swiped a college kid's card, and it declined. Well, this kid very calmly said, "Oh, my parents must have cut me off. Excuse me." Then proceeds to get out of line and walk a few feet away to call his parents. Once said parents answer the phone, the kid proceeds to yell at his parents and insist that they give him money, all within earshot of everyone around the register. Story 20. I once had a woman scream at me and call me a witch. Then she dumped her purse out and started showing me expensive makeup to prove she's not poor and broke. Could I afford a $50 lipstick if I were broke? No, I could not. It was a lipstick that normally sells for $25 or so anyway. She demanded I push it through, like I had any ability to do something like that. The manager came up and told her she had to leave because we couldn't push a transaction through a declined card. Story 21. Not a cash register, but our ATM. Card declined for insufficient funds. Lady says, "Oh, what a shame. This ATM must be out of money." Yeah, that must be it. This happened to me. Asked for $40 out of my ATM. It was attached to the bank, and it only gave me $20. I walked inside and explained, easy fix, but dang, even they were surprised. It was like 15 years ago. I kind of felt special. Story 22. One lady gave me her card and asked for scissors to cut up her old one. She was cutting as her card I was running declined. She cut up the wrong one. Nothing I could do. She was ticked off. This is why it always freaks me out when people ask me to cut up their card. No. Story 23. Mostly it's just, "Oh no, that should definitely go through. Try it again." Fails. "Let me check the bank." Calls and complains at the bank for a bit. "Now try." Works. My bank's fraud alerts are super sensitive. This happens to me all the time. Story 24. I had this one lady who just kept making me rescan it over and over and over again, until eventually my manager had to shoo her away. She was clearly desperate, but I worked at a store where nothing we sold was necessary for daily life. Literally nothing. So I didn't have much sympathy. Story 25. Cashier at a drive-thru. I took his card from the first window, told him it was declined. He says, "All right, I'll just go, I guess." He pulls up to the next window, demands food, then slams on the gas, pulling away, almost crashing into another car. That boy wanted his Wendy's. Story 26. I had a lady break down and start crying. While she was in line, she already looked like her world was falling apart. I don't remember what she bought, but I don't think it was more than $30, and the guy behind her offered to pay for it. More crying ensued. Story 27. The guy had a rubber band with like over 30 cards. None of them worked. Was my first day on the job. Dude was likely a thief. Story 28. I had a lady hand me a card. It was declined. She then pulled out her wallet and handed me easily 30 more cards and said, "Just scan them till one goes through, honey." That was just odd. Story 29. The other day, a woman left 4 kids as collateral while she spent an hour finding her card. Smart woman. Free daycare. Click on one of the videos you see on the screen now, or a Karen will sue you.